Hey, it's Big T. Today I am going to spin up for us a synthetic stimulator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our traditional stimulator and I'm going to replace the elk hair with some synthetic products. And the reason I'm doing this is I find that elk hair has a tendency to absorb water, and even when I apply floatants to it, it doesn't seem to want to dry out nearly as quickly as these synthetics. So this is an attractor pattern. It doesn't necessarily imitate anything in particular, but it will catch fish for sure and is a fantastic fly to have as an indicator if you are dry dropping. We're going to start out with some red thread. This is uni, I believe, in the 8/0. And I'm going to go ahead and create a thread base wrapping from the behind the eye of the hook to the back. The hook that we're using today is a barbless Big T size 12 terrestrial hook. Just find the curve in it creates a nice little profile. And I'm going to wrap back up to approximately 2/3 of the way up the hook shank. And I'm going to grab some polypropylene yarn or polypro. This is the type of yarn that you're generally going to see for parachute posts. But I'm going to use this as a tail. And because it's got good flotation qualities, it's going to help us out a little bit. And I'm going to tie that in, and I'm going to come forward and clean up a little bit of this before I start going backwards. And by going backwards and using this, we're going to create a slight bit of bulk to the body. And once I get to the tail end of this, we're going to trim that off. We're not going to have a long tail. This is going to be a little bit of a short, stubby tail. Next thing I need to do is tie in my dry fly hackle. This is just a grizzly hackle from a saddle. This might be a little bit oversized, but the gap on this particular hook in relation to its length is a little smaller, so I'm not afraid to get a little bit bigger. Then we're going to tie in or put together some ice dubbing. I'm going to use ice dubbing because, again, it's not going to absorb a lot and hold a lot of water. This is a hot yellow, and I'm starting with yellow since I had an orange tail. We're going to contrast that in the front of the fly with orange. We'll go ahead and wrap that forward to our 2/3 mark, and then we will palmer our dry fly hackle up through there. As far as spacing is concerned, if I were simply tying this as a dry fly that I would not hold any weight under, I would probably space this a little farther apart. But since I know it's likely that this will be used as an indicator, my wraps are closer together. So we'll get that secured by wrapping behind and in front of that feather. And now it's time for our top wing casing, which again traditionally is going to be elk hair. I'm going to replace that with polypropylene yarn again, and this is about 5 strands that I have put together. Substitutes in addition to something like this would be you can actually use streamer fibers. and they'll shed water real well. We're going to get that secured down and then try and come forward. You're probably going to have a pretty big drop off here from the hook to that wing. So what I like to do is go ahead and build up, I guess I'd call it a bit of a ramp down here to make that transition a lot less dramatic so we don't have such a stair step. And that ought to be close to good enough for us. And then we're going to go ahead and cut that wing right there before our tail starts. We're going to keep it at an angle, take a look at that, and create our wing. You can also brush that out if you've got some sort of dubbing brush, just to fluff it and get it separated before we put our front part of our fly together. I like contrast in my flies. Contrast in colors, I think, can help attract fish. So I'm actually going to put orange in as our front color. First, however, I'm going to go ahead and tie in that same grizzly hackle. And when you're tying that, I have the better or more colored side facing me as I tie that in. We'll get our hot orange ice dubbing. And you're not going to need a lot of this. We'll make our dubbing noodle, slide that up where it needs to be. If the red's showing through, there's no problem with that either. I don't mind a little red sticking through up front. And we'll begin to palmer that. Don't be afraid to get your offhand involved in the tie and kind of tell the stuff where you want it to go versus allow it to tell you. Alright, I'm not going to trim that off until I have actually put our finish knot on. In this case, and in a lot of the dry flies that I tie, I will actually do a half hitch. Couple things, it's easy, but it also will allow me at times when I need to get that hackle pushed back. We'll knock out a couple of those, and then I'll come in and I'll take my scissors and actually follow the stem down to trim that out so I'm not taking so many fibers away from everything else. So that's a nice little bushy synthetic stimulator, sheds water well, will float nymphs well. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please check out my website for these materials and more at bigtflyfishing.com and subscribe to my channel.